I hope we can be together with Susan again. Susan, if you're there, please send me the request again and we can start, or we can go on with the interview. Hello, Raquel, Roxana, everybody. We're waiting for Susan. She's on. Hello, we're back.
We're back.
So you were telling us a story, but we will recap in a moment. People send me these questions, Susan. In what countries have you lived before coming to Argentina? You mentioned Singapore.
Yeah. We also lived in Saudi Arabia, where I had to wear the black cape and the habib, and I was not allowed out on my own. I could only go out if Mick accompanied me. I wasn't allowed to drive. I wasn't allowed to go to the library. I wasn't allowed to go to the zoo with my child, except on ladies' night. I wasn't allowed to go to the shops on my own. I wasn't allowed out of the house. So we say very often that the quarantine is a little bit like living in Saudi Arabia, except that we have great Malbec Argentine wine, and we have gin and tonic, which of course we couldn't get in Saudi. There was no booze in Saudi at all. So the quarantine is really okay for us because we lived like this for 2 years with nowhere to go. There were no discos, there were no cinemas, there were no restaurants that I could eat in because of course I couldn't lift the veil to eat. So I was wearing a mask the whole time when I was living there. So this quarantine isn't so bad for us at all. We're tolerating it very well.
Yes. Once you told me that you had to go very late at night to play with your kid. Was it there in Saudi?
To play with the kids?
Yes, with your son. Because
no.
you were not allowed to go to the park during the day.
We had to get up, right, we had to get up very, very early. We had to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the park with James so that we could play with him in the park before it got too hot. Because it got so hot that by about 7 o'clock in the morning, we were already going back to our flat with the aircon because it was just too hot to be outside. And we had no balconies in the flat because a man could see me on the balcony. And so we had no balconies, so no escape from the flat once you were inside it. And all the windows were frosted glass, just in case a man should be able to look in and see my face.
Wow. So 2 years in Saudi Arabia? How
2
long
years
in Singapore?
3 years in Singapore.
And in
Singapore
any
was
other country?
fascinating.
What about Spain?
Yes, after Saudi Arabia, we went to Spain. And that's where we met the Argentines. And that's why we are here today.
Wow. You mentioned Malbec. What is it that you like most about our country, Argentina?
Oh, I love Argentina. There are many, many things we love about Argentina. We love the people. We love the wine. We love the meat. We love the outdoor life, you know, the street life, the ability to be able to go out all the time, well, except in quarantine, of course, but the ability to be able to go out and enjoy yourself. And you have such beautiful places. You can say any place to me, any city to me, and I can tell you if we have been there or not.
Wow. Like you've been to Jujuy, so we were not going to mention Jujuy. But for example, in the south of Argentina, Comodoro Rivadavia.
We've been to Ushuaia, Rio Gallegos, Punto Tombo, Bariloche. We've been to all the major places. We haven't always been to the little tiny places, of course, but we've been to all the major places in Argentina, in the south, in the north, in the middle, in the east, and in the west.
Can you tell us what you once told me about your traveling here in the north of Argentina with Sarah and James traveling by bus, remember? And the kids collecting things and people saying how well behaved they were.
Yes, yes. When we always went on holiday with our children, we always bought a Lancaster pad. I don't know if they exist anymore, but in those days they were called Lancaster pads. And we always bought them new crayons, new coloring sticks, glue, scissors, and anything else that they needed to make their journal. So both of them wrote a journal at their own level. And it was amazing because on the bus, all the Argentines said to us, "Oh, your children are angels." And we said, "No, they're not angels. They're just normal English kids. They live in Argentina, but they've been brought up in the English way. And they know how to behave, and they love doing their journals. And every day they would glue something in their journal. They would write about what we have done. They would draw pictures." Sarah, for example, was 4 when we went to Machu Picchu. And she did these amazing line drawings of all the places in Machu Picchu. And the people in the bus would look on her journal every day, and they would say, "Oh, this is amazing. You have to have it published." Of course, for me, it wasn't really amazing. It was just my daughter doing her journal.
Which was the most eccentric place you visited?
I think it has to be Saudi Arabia, because it was so different from anywhere else I have lived or visited. And we knew a lot about it already because we had studied, we had investigated. We had a friend who had lived there for 7 years. So he told us a lot about it. So we knew a lot. But when we got there, it was quite strange, the lifestyle. And it was particularly difficult for me because, well, my personality, and I had for me because I had no freedom, I had no independence. I was completely dependent on my husband, and that had never happened to me before.
Yeah, it must have been awful for you. Right. So Saudi Arabia then.
From the supermarket. So I said to Mick, "I'm just going to the supermarket at the end of the road." So he said, "Okay."
Yes.
dropped me off. It stopped me against the wall of the construction site. It was actually the guy from the supermarket, and he said, "No, you are not. Get in."
Wow.
The other strange thing about Saudi Arabia was that there were no streets, there were no house numbers.
Really?
Street, which is opposite the Royal Palace Hotel. Or we live 5 flats up from the corner, etc. That was the only way. And you couldn't receive any letters or anything in those days because there were no street names, there were no numbers.
Wow. Susan, and once you told me also how you decide to go places years ago. You said that you looked at the newspaper and said, oh, there is a job here. We should go to this place.
That's how it was. We had always loved traveling. We had spent many summers on the continent. We called it the continent, that's Europe. For people in Britain, we called it the continent. And we used to go camping. We had the big backpacks with the tent and the billy cans hanging off at the bottom, and the little gas stove, and our knives and forks and our plates and our spoons, etc. And we used to go hitchhiking. I don't know if you ever did hitchhiking in Argentina, but we used to stand on the side of the road with our thumbs out and wait for somebody to come along and pick us up and take us somewhere. We didn't really have any aims. We just stood there and they would stop and say, where do you want to go? And we'd say, where are you going? And they'd say, oh, we're going to Heidelberg. Okay, fine, let's go to Heidelberg. And so we went all over the continent like that. And many people were so kind. They used to say, and have you got somewhere to stay tonight? And we'd say, no, not yet, but when we get there, we'll find somewhere. Oh no, come to my house. Come to my house, and you can have a bath. I don't know if we were smelly at that point, but you can have a bath and we'll give you dinner and you can watch TV and we can talk, and then tomorrow you can decide if you want to stay. We met some fabulous people. People are so kind. People are so kind when you open your own heart to them.
Yes, that's right.
They're very kind. Yeah. We had a wonderful time. So we wanted to travel. We already decided we wanted to travel in the world. I hadn't been out of England very much. Mick had been out of England a little bit more than me. But we used to buy the Times educational supplement every Friday. And we were looking to change our jobs. We wanted to change our jobs because we'd been in our schools, in my case, 3 years, and in Mick's case, 4 years. And we decided we needed promotion. We wanted to go up the ladder, you know. And so we bought the Times educational supplement to find another job somewhere in Britain. And then we started saying, why don't we, instead of moving in Britain, why don't we move in the world? And so we started looking in the back pages, the back 3 pages of the Times educational supplement, where all the overseas jobs are. And that's how we decided. And so we applied for lots of jobs in the first instance, and we were offered a job in Singapore and a job in Tanzania, in Africa. in Arusha,
Wow.
actually, Arusha in Tanzania. And so we went to the library. We didn't have internet in those days. Can you believe it? We went to the library and we studied Singapore. We studied about Tanzania. We looked at the differences in the contract in terms of salary. And we were very happy. We were very happy in Singapore.
Wow. But at that time,
You know,
it was just you and Mick. No kids yet.
no.
Max, nuestra se corta.
Which was a bit of a surprise, actually.
What did your mom say when you said we're leaving, we're going to, I don't know, Saudi Arabia, or how did you tell them? Because you are a mom too. I am a mom.
Yeah.
And just having your kids at those times.
Right.
Going away for such a long period of time, 2 years.
3 years in Singapore. The first time we went overseas, my mum was very happy because she had always wanted to live abroad. And her first husband was interested in going to live in Canada. But in those days, it was very difficult. You know, it was just after the war and it was very difficult. And so they never made it. Unfortunately, he got cancer and he died when my mum was quite young, actually. She was only 28. And then she married my dad, and my dad had no interest whatsoever in going abroad.
Oh, no.
No interest whatsoever. My mum was always asking, can we go to the continent? Can we go to France? And my dad always answered, no, I won't let you, because it's all barbed wire and fences. Because he had fought in the war. He was at Dunkirk. He was on the Lancastria when it was bombed by the Germans. So he had so many experiences of the continent that he never, ever wanted to go there. So when I told my mum we were going to Singapore, she was very happy. She was very happy. And of course, they came to visit. And they always said, it's so wonderful that you decide to go to these places, because we would never have had the chance to go to them. So in that sense, it was very, very nice. But of course, when James was born in Singapore, it was difficult for me because I was totally on my own. And it was difficult for my mum as well.
Yeah. Susan, you've been to China many times and you have stayed there for long periods. What is it like to live there, to work there? What is the life for a woman there, now that you were talking about Saudi Arabia? And can we know a little bit about China?
Right. I've only ever stayed for 1 month. I have been, in the last few years, I have been 3 times to China in 1 year, and each time I have stayed for 1 month. And of course, I can talk about China from my point of view.
But first, tell us, how long does it take to get there?
Oh, right. Between 36 and 42 hours. Depending on which route you take, because you always have a stopover somewhere for 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours. In one case, it was 13 hours.
Wow.
So, and it also depends where you're going in China as well. If you're going to the major cities, you can fly straight in. But if you're going to the smaller cities, you have to fly into the major cities and then you have to change. So you will have 2 stopovers. So it can take up to about 42 hours. And I became resigned to this idea. And I had my computer with things on it that I needed to read that I had saved and hadn't read. I had my novel that I was reading, and I had the films on the screen in front of me. So I used to do one of the 3 things in order to make the time pass. I don't sleep very well on aeroplanes, so I was never able to like rely on the idea that, okay, I'm going to go to sleep. I see some people who get on aeroplanes and they just sit down and they immediately nod off.
That's me. I just wake up when the food comes. No, you know, as soon as the food trolley comes, I wake up, I eat, and then I go back to sleep all the time. Just eat and sleep.
I can't do it. So it's always a bit of a trial for me. But I accept it because the work I get in China is really interesting. I do EMI at some of the top universities in China. So it's English as a medium of instruction. And what I'm doing is training university professors to teach their major in English. And so I don't only teach them, in fact, I don't teach them English. They can all speak English. I teach them methodology. I teach them updated methodology to make their lectures interesting and to stop them walking into the lecture hall and just speaking for 90 minutes and then saying bye-bye and going. So it's really very interesting. I'm changing mindsets, and that is really difficult to do. So I see it as a big challenge and I love it. And I can see the difference when I've been there for 2 days or 3 days. I start seeing them change.
Wow.
They change at different rates. You know, some of them go, whoa, yeah, this is it. Some of them go, no, this isn't for me. No. I need to do my content. So it's very interesting. And
what
also,
is yes, what is society like? What is it like to be there? Well, you're always escorting, I think.
You have to remember that I work for the British Council, and I also work for my own agent who takes me around different cities to do drama. So I do the EMI for the British Council, and I do drama for my agent, who is Darshong. And I'm treated very, very well. So I probably am not a really very good person to be able to tell you about what Chinese society is really like, because I am privileged. I'm put up in the best hotels, 5-star hotels. I eat wonderful Chinese food every day, and I bring the recipes home in order to be able to cook them. And I am treated like VIP.
Wow. And talking about travelings, and I can see that Gustavo is there, and Monica Rodriguez Salvo has joined us too.
Hi, Monica. Hi, Gustavo.
Eugenia de Loza is also connected.
Hi, Eugenia.
How do you deal with the luggage and the shoes and the clothes and the bags and the shopping therapy?
I have a problem which is similar to yours, but not as exaggerated as yours. I love my shoes. I love my conference outfits, and I have to pack for different kinds of things, conferences, courses, and I have to have my formal clothes. But at the weekend, I have my free time. I don't get much free time when I'm in China because there's a lot of traveling involved in it, but I get some free time. And whenever I have free time, I try my very best to go on excursions. So I have to have my boots and my trainers and my jeans and my jackets or whatever to go on the excursions at the weekend. So I have to have these two types of clothes in my bag. And I always take a full suitcase. And then I have the big problem that I want to buy clothes in China because I love Chinese clothes. I love Chinese shopping malls. They are just crazy. They are incredible. And of course, it's cheap. It's cheap for us. And then I have a big problem with the grandchildren because I have to bring the grandchildren presents. And I set up a precedent for presents, which I should never have set up. And I often have to buy another suitcase.
Well, that's something I learned from Gustavo Gonzalez. He always carries one suitcase inside the big one.
Right.
So he doesn't buy another one, but he still has, oh, hello, Alistair.
Hi, Alistair.
So he doesn't have to buy a new one, but still dealing with, you know, the extra weight, it's quite a problem.
And
anyways,
there's another problem in China as well. And that is if you come on an international flight to China, you have 23 kilos. But if you travel nationally inside China, you're only allowed 18 kilos.
I see.
So you have to offload 5 kilos in some way, or you have to pay a fine.
Wow.
That's
so you
really
offload.
It gets on my nerves. It really gets on my nerves.
Now, coming back to, no, not always, he says. Yes, I know, Gustavo. This is from the times we shared, you know, some of the trips together, and with Lucrecia too, my roommate. And Susan, once you told me that the secret to your marriage was that you and Mick had agreed to disagree. Can you explain that?
Yes, we realized many years ago, because we've been together 51 years now, but we realized many years ago that we love each other, but we are going to change. He's going to change in his way. I'm going to change in my way. And we don't have to agree about everything. We agree to disagree. So we started doing that a long time ago. And it's worked very well with us. And what we've found now, as we grow older together, is that actually we don't disagree about very much at all anymore. So we don't even have to have the rule anymore. We don't have to agree to disagree because we don't disagree very much.
But maybe because you have that in mind, that it's like freedom for both of you.
Yes, yes.
And really.
And I've always supported Mick with his music, and I've always helped him. I've always carried the speakers, carried the amplifiers, carried the microphones. I have been the plumber. And he has always supported me in making sure that it was okay for me to go overseas or for me to go away for the weekend to do my conferences and my courses. Last year, for example, I went away 14 times.
Wow.
It's a lot.
Yes, we were talking about that once too, because we had many conversations at your lovely house and also at beautiful restaurants in Buenos Aires. We have shared wonderful dinner parties. And last Saturday, when I was talking to Belen Gonzalez. Now I am talking to you, and we are always telling people how we deal as moms with this living, you know, with these trips, with this living to conferences or living on assignments for our jobs. Right. So what do you do? How did you feel at that time? You told me that you didn't start traveling until the kids were big enough, old enough.
Yeah. It's quite strange actually, because I started traveling when I came to Argentina because people invited me, and my kids were already growing up. So I didn't really start traveling till 1993, when James was already 18, I suppose, and Sarah was about, I suppose Sarah was 13 or 14. But in those days, I was still a very good housewife. So I used to make all their dinners and label them and put them in the freezer. So wow. I would put, this is Saturday's lunch, this is Saturday's dinner, this is Sunday lunch, this is whatever. And then Mick said to me, you don't have to do that. We can go out and eat in a restaurant. And I've always been, you know, I come from a poor family, and we never ate in restaurants because we didn't have the money to do it. We ate in restaurants maybe once a year. At Christmas time, when we went to the pantomime at the theatre, we would eat in a restaurant. But for the rest of the time, my mother cooked all the time. And so it was natural for me to make sure that they had their food. But Mick said, you don't need to do that. And then I began to calm down. You know, I said to myself, Susan, calm down, calm down. You don't have to do this. They can look after themselves. They can make their own sandwiches. You don't have to make cooked food for them in the Tupperware every day. And so I began to calm down. And wow. Then it became much, much more relaxed for me.
And you never stopped after that?
No, I stopped gradually, I think. I think it was hard for me to relinquish, you know, the idea that I was the mom, I was the housewife, I was the person who had to provide everything. The kitchen is the heart of the family, and and all that sort of thing. So it took me time to really understand that it was possible for me to be a modern mum.
Somebody says, I can't imagine me, Marcela, leaving all those dishes in the freezer when traveling. No. Susan, tell us about your cooking now that you mentioned dishes. When did you start loving, you know, trying these different dishes from different cultures? I remember when you came to Jujuy, you took your locoto ají, your locoto chili from our quebrada to Buenos Aires.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I've just about run out from that big box that you brought me with all the sachets in, you know, with a little hole at the bottom. I've just run out.
Oh.
I actually started cooking when I was 3. My mum my mum was a really good cook. English food, very, very definitely English food. My dad was a gardener, and he had his own allotment, which is like a parcel, I suppose you would call it here. Cancha? No.
Parcela.
Yeah. Parcela, right. And these were plots of land which were given to the men during the war for them to grow their own fruit and vegetables. And my dad was off in the war, so he didn't have one. But when he came back, the government allowed everybody to keep their plot or to get a plot and to grow their own fruit and vegetables. So my father was very interested in that. And in fact, I spent many, 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 many Saturdays and Sundays at the plot with my dad. For me, it was like a world apart. It was like a totally different world. I used to go to the plot and we used to dig the soil. We used to plow the soil. We used to plant the seeds. He never used chemicals of any kind whatsoever. And I had my own corner in the plot where, in fact, I wanted to grow flowers. And I used to grow sweet peas. I used to grow sweet peas and marigolds. But I helped him all the time. I spent many hours in the shed with the paraffin stove on, drinking cups of tea with all the old men. I was the only little girl there. And all the old men were talking about their gardening and their carpentry. And I loved it. It was like a world apart from me. It was like paradise. And I've forgotten what the question was now.
When did you start cooking and preparing these international dishes?
And so my father and I brought back all the vegetables from the plot. We used to go to the plot on our bikes, on our bicycles. We never had a car. We never had a car at home. We couldn't afford it. And we used to come back on our bicycles, and my mum would wash all the vegetables. And we were the first people in our street to have a freezer. So my mum learned how to use a freezer because she had all this wonderful produce from my dad's garden, from the plot. And so she used to cook with all this amazing fresh food. And my mum hardly ever used a tin or a can of anything. She never used any processed food. And I still have hardly any processed food in my house. You won't find anything in my house. Just a few cans of tomatoes and a few bricks of tomato sauce and maybe some corn in a can for Alex, but hardly any tins or cans or processed food at all. Everything's fresh in this house. And
so you learned to cook from your mom?
I learned to cook from my mum. She made, on Sunday mornings, she used to make the Sunday lunch, which was always a roast. We always had a starter. She was great with soups. I also make great soups. And we always had a roast, and that with vegetables and potatoes. And then we had a dessert. And then in the afternoon, we would have Sunday tea, which was usually a pie. And she would make the pastry and make the filling for the pie, and a dessert for tea as well. And I learned to cook beside my mum. In English, we say, at my mum's apron strings. Which is a nice,
I didn't know
it's
that
a nice, it's a nice saying.
Apron
it's like,
strings.
Yeah, the idea that we're very little and we're at our mum's apron strings. But of course, she used to always sit me up on the counter, and she used to help me do the chopping. She used to give me easy things to chop, and she used to help me do all the mixing. We didn't have processors or any of those gadgets in those days. So she used to give me all the mixing.
And people that follow you in your social media, they can see that you do the same with Mila and Alex.
Yes, yes, I do. And I love it. And I did a Zoom cookery class with James and Guillermo on how to make British Indian restaurant.
Yes, you're right.
Curry.
I saw that.
I loved it. I'm going to do another one with them now.
Does Mick cook?
No. He hates it. But since we've been in quarantine, he helps me a lot, because we have to have lunch and we have to have dinner. We don't have a big breakfast anymore. But I used to cook.
I'm asking you, Yes, I'm asking you because I saw him, you know, in the oven that you have upstairs in your terrace. He was showing something too, and I thought that he had prepared it.
Oh, yes. He's very good at making a barbecue, an asado.
Yes.
He's a very good British asador. And he learned one trick that he learned was take your watch off. And that was the thing that changed everything. When he took his watch off and he didn't care about the time, he became a great asador. And he makes he makes great barbecues. And upstairs on the terrace, we also have a mud oven. We had a mud oven made up there in situ. So they didn't bring it to the house and put it there. They made it there. And wow. we do some great meals in the mud oven. It's great for Indian food. It's like a tandoori. The tandoori in India is in the ground. But my tandoori is like a mud oven, so it's up. It's up on the counter.
Yes.
But it has the same effect as a tandoor.
Susan, and we have talked about, oh, thank you for accepting being interviewed by me today. We have talked about your travelings. We have talked about your job as a teacher in China, but we haven't talked about your books. How many have you written?
Really, I've only written 3. I've written Global Issues, which I think is now out of print. I think Oxford University Press has decided to take all those resource books for teachers out of print, which I think it's a pity for me, but I think it's a pity for everybody, because those books, I have many of them, and they are all brilliant. But if they're out of print, we can't get hold of them.
Is that the Global Issues one?
Global Issues, yes. Global Issues, yes. I've got the cover of it here in the bar, but you can't see it. It's just on the side here. And then I wrote with Vicky Saumel, who I think you also know. I wrote an ebook for Pearson, New York, which is part of their course on the online courses for teachers. So I wrote about the preparation for the TKT with Vicky. So that's an online book. So it was a book, but it wasn't a traditional book. And then I decided that I wanted to pass on my knowledge of teaching English through drama. So I wrote English through drama for Helbling. And that really is my life's work, because that's what I've done for 47 years. And you have presented it. Yeah.
You have presented it in many conferences, and you have sent one to Sir Ken Robinson too.
Yes, I have. I've sent one to Sir Ken Robinson, and he received it with a smile, and he commented on it. And I even invited him to speak to my last course on English through drama, and he attended our Zoom meeting, and that was really, really exciting.
What did the attendees say? They were shocked, probably, to have him there in a Zoom meeting.
They were absolutely devastated. And they asked if we could meet afterwards. And so we had a post-Ken Zoom meeting, and we were all crying.
Wow.
Yes, that must have been amazing. All crying. And they were all talking about moments in their life when they had a revelation, and moments in their lives when they really achieved something for themselves, and it was amazing.
Yes, I read the Elements. I loved it too. But
Yeah.
I mean, being with him must have been, wow, the moment for many teachers.
And he said he wants to do it again. So
nice.
Maybe next month we'll have another one.
Interesting. So interesting. Susan, and I don't want to forget this because I love your anecdotes about that time. Tell us a little bit of what was it like to be at the same time with the Beatles in the cavern?
You know, the thing was that we didn't know that the Beatles were going to become so famous. So for us, going to the cavern at lunchtime from school, my mum thought I was eating my boiled beef and carrots in the school canteen, and I was on the bus on the way to dance to the Beatles in the cavern in town. And we thought, okay, yeah, they're a great group. They do great lunchtime concerts and we love dancing with them. But we had no idea that they were going to capture the imagination of the whole world. And if I had known, I would have like stolen John Lennon's tie or something like that. But we didn't know. For us, they were just a great local group. And now afterwards, in retrospect is always very easy, right? In retrospect, I realized that it was an amazing time and that I lived in a time which changed the world, really. The 60s changed the world. And the world was never the same after the 60s. In the same way as this COVID-19 has changed the world. But I think the 1960s changed the world in a great way, an exciting way. And we all became more aware of talent, of creativity, of music, and how things can change. Things can change our world. And that for me was a great moment. I went to the same school as John Lennon also.
Wow. But you didn't know at that time that he would become so famous. Susan, if you could tell anything to people that are at their profesorados now, people that are going to become teachers, what piece of advice would you give them?
I would say that it's very important that you take what you are offered at the profesorado and then you expand. You become a lifelong learner. I think it's really important to read. I can't say read enough times because in reading, you find out so much. Reading is the only way that we can really expand our knowledge. And that's what we are able to do. So you have to find time to read. I know everybody's horribly busy, especially now in the quarantine. It's even worse. I am the same. I am horribly busy. I just don't have enough hours in the day to finish what I need to finish. But you must read, you must investigate, you must research, you must constantly be curious, you must avoid burnout. I've been teaching for 47 years. I'm going to be 70 in October and I am still learning. And I think that's how you avoid burnout. Keep being curious. Keep asking questions, keep finding out how you can improve, because the profesorado is great, but it's not enough. So you have to constantly, I always say it's like Stephen Covey's idea of sharpening the saw. You have to sharpen the saw. You have to sharpen the scissors. You have to sharpen the knife. because they all get blunt. With constant use, they get blunt. And you have to try your very best to avoid burnout. Because as soon as you get burnt out, you're done.
And how do you avoid that?
I just keep doing things that are quite daring. I keep doing things that are, for me, difficult and for me, modern. 5 years ago, I realized that I was going to come to a point where I was going to retire. In fact, I was retired. And that I wasn't going to be able to travel forever and ever and ever and ever and ever, amen. I was going to have to stop traveling at some point because the body was going to, even if the mind was still healthy, the body was going to say, stop it, because I can't do this anymore. All this packing and unpacking and going to different climates, somewhere sunny, somewhere winter, doing different courses, meeting different people, going to different places. So I decided that I had to get modern and I had to learn how to do online teaching. And I had already been doing online teaching because I have been the master's degree teacher in the New New School, New York, and also in La Sabana, Bogota. And also I wrote my own course for New Learning here in Argentina. So I had already been doing online teaching, but I didn't know how to use the learning management systems that were coming out, you know, because technology changes all the time. It's very hard for me to keep up with it. So I wanted to learn how to do an online course on a Moodle, because I believed, I did a lot of investigation and I knew how to use Blackboard. I knew how to be a moderator because I had done Evo Drama. I had done Evo Drama for, I think, 6 years. And I decided that I needed to learn how to use the Moodle. So I did a course with Nelly Deutsch, who is one of my very good friends online. I met her actually in New Orleans as well, which was nice. And I decided that this was going to be my plan for when I retired, for when I stopped traveling. So I learned to do online teaching and I opened my own academy. I did my website. I learned how to do newsletters, all very, very hard for me because I'm not really technologically literate. I'm definitely an immigrant. I'm not a digital native at all. So all very hard for me, a lot of crying, a lot of cursing, but I did it. And I am really very thrilled with my online course. I have trained more than 160 teachers now from 23 different countries. And I think what is best about it for me is that I am putting people together from different cultures. And it's this intercultural learning that comes out of it naturally because people from different countries join my courses. And they're all the questions I ask are about their contexts. I don't ask them crazy questions where they have to go to Google and look things up and do investigations. I ask them about their context and I ask them about what they are doing and what problems they are facing. And they all come together because they find they have the same successes, the same failures. They discover that they are all different, but they are all the same. And that for me is one of the best things.
Yes, and I saw, and as I said before, if we follow you on your social media, we can see what people are doing after they finish the courses. They keep on working together. You are you are looking at wonderful projects, international, global projects, starting now.
Yes.
As a consequence of the course. And that I think is amazing.
Me too. Me too. I was absolutely thrilled when this happened. And I can't tell you how I felt.
Susan, and my last question is about the language. Because you know, I am married to a Polish and I don't speak Polish. You are married to an English person, but you live in Argentina. So inside the house and with your family, you always speak English, and with your friends too. But how do you feel when you have to speak Spanish?
Strangely, I used to feel very, very, very nervous because I never really learned Spanish properly. I learned Spanish by ear because I tried to get some teachers, but I found the teachers were very traditional and they wanted me to read Platero y Yo, and and they wanted to do grammar with me. And I didn't want that. I wanted conversation. I wanted to be able to go to the station and ask for tickets. I wanted to be able to go to the grocery store, the greengrocers, and ask for a kilo of zapallo instead of a kilo de zapatillo. And so I didn't get on with my formal learning at all. I found a teacher who would agree to do conversation with me. She was a teacher at St. Leonard's at my school, and she was Italian in origin, and she taught me conversation. And then I think I must have had a few gin and tonics or something. But I said to my son, when you do your Spanish as a second language exam, because I insisted he had to do Spanish as a second language because all the other kids in his class were doing English as a first language. I said, when you do your Spanish as a second language exam, I'm going to go with you. So can you believe it? I think I was 40 years of age. I was 40 years of age, and I went to Belgrano Day School, and I sat in the examination room with all the 15, 16-year-old students doing their IGCSEs. And I did my Spanish as a second language exam. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying. But I came out with an A. I got an A.
Wow. Congratulations.
So I was very pleased with myself. But I honestly don't think it really taught me to speak. I still had butterflies in my stomach every time I had to go out and speak. But strangely, what I found is that since I've been, well, I went to Nile for many years, as you know, in England, and I didn't speak Spanish for maybe a month, 2 months. Well, 1 year, I was there for 3 months. And when I came back, my Spanish had improved.
Wow.
I don't understand.
Okay. Susan, we have only 1 minute, only 1 more minute before it finishes. So I want to thank you and send a big kiss to Mick, who is helping us.
Yes.
It was a pleasure having you as our guest today in the home bar, and to look at your home bar too. I hope you enjoyed sharing with us as much as we enjoyed listening to your stories.
I loved it. I loved it. You didn't ask me about the anecdotes about my traveling or my children, but never mind.
Yes, because there were so many things. We deserve a second interview. There were so many things to share with the people that joined us today.
Thank you.
You couldn't see the comments, but they are wonderful. I will tell you.
No. I couldn't see the comments.
Yes. Thank you very much, Susan.
Thank you.
And thank you, everybody who joined us today.
Thank you, everybody. Big kisses.